23 years old, fresh out of college. First real paycheck hits the account. Most people take that money and make a decision in the next 6 months that'll cost them somewhere between $500,000 and $2 million over their lifetime. They don't know they're making it. Nobody warns them. It just seems like a normal choice that everyone else is making too. By the time they realize what happened, they're 38 years old, wondering why they're still broke despite doing everything they thought they were supposed to do. There are 4 specific financial mistakes that don't just set you back temporarily. They compound negatively for decades, getting worse and worse until they've consumed your entire financial future. If you're young enough, you can still avoid them. If you've already made them, understanding what they're costing you might give you the motivation to fix them before it's too late. Hit that subscribe button because we're about to break down exactly how these mistakes destroy wealth in ways most people never see coming. The first mistake is financing a lifestyle you haven't earned yet. This isn't about buying one thing you can't afford. This is about using debt to live like you make $85,000 when you actually make $55,000. Car payments, furniture on credit, vacations on credit cards that don't get paid off, clothes you can't really afford because you need them for work. Each individual purchase feels justified. The car is necessary for commuting. The furniture is needed because you can't live in an empty apartment. The vacation is fine because you work hard and deserve a break. But here's what actually happens. Someone making $55,000 annually takes home about $3,700 monthly after taxes. They finance a $32,000 car because they just got a real job and they deserve something nice. That's $580 a month for 6 years. They put $4,000 of furniture on a store credit card at 24% interest, minimum payment $140 monthly. They take 2 vacations a year on credit cards, spending about $3,000 annually that doesn't get fully paid off, so they're carrying a balance and paying interest. Add it all up, and they're paying about $950 monthly just to maintain a lifestyle that looks successful, but is built entirely on borrowed money. That $950 a month for 6 years is $68,400 in payments. But the real cost is what that money could have become if it had been invested instead. That same $950 monthly invested at 10% annual returns over 30 years becomes $217 million. They traded the possibility of retiring a millionaire for the appearance of success in their 20s. And the worst part is they don't realize it's happening because everyone around them is making the same mistake. There's a specific case that shows how this plays out over decades. 2 people, both starting careers at 23, making $52,000. One finances a lifestyle. Nice car, nice apartment, eats out regularly, takes trips, buys things on credit. They're paying about $100 monthly in debt payments throughout their 20s. The other lives modestly, drives a paid-off used car, has roommates, packs lunch, and invests that $1,100 monthly instead. By age 33, the one who financed their lifestyle has paid off most of the early debts, but has nothing saved and has developed spending habits that are hard to break. They've spent 10 years looking successful, but building zero wealth. The one who lived below their means has $230,000 invested. By 45, assuming they both start saving the same amount going forward, the early saver has $890,000, while the late starter has $340,000. Same income, same jobs, but one person's 20s cost them over $500,000. The psychology of this mistake is brutal because it doesn't feel like a mistake while you're making it. You're doing what seems normal. Everyone finances cars. Everyone has some credit card debt. Everyone struggles with money in their 20s, right? Except you're not just struggling temporarily, you're establishing patterns that'll keep you broke for decades. The person who normalizes financing their lifestyle in their 20s will do the same thing in their 30s when they make more money, and their 40s and their 50s. The amount they finance increases with their income, but the pattern never changes. The second mistake is job hopping for lateral moves instead of strategic income growth. This one surprises people because conventional wisdom says you should change jobs every few years to maximize income. But there's a massive difference between strategic job changes that increase your skills and income trajectory versus just bouncing around because you're restless or unhappy. Someone starts a job at 24 making $48,000. 18 months later, they're bored and frustrated, so they switch to a different company for $52,000. Seems smart, 8% raise, but they left before they'd built any real expertise or gotten promoted. 2 years later, they're frustrated again. They switch to another company for $57,000, another decent bump. By 30, they've had 5 jobs and are making $64,000. They think they're doing well because their income has grown 33% in 6 years. Compare that to someone who started at the same company making $48,000 but stayed long enough to actually develop expertise and get promoted. After 2 years, they're making $54,000. After 4 years, they're a senior associate making $68,000. After 6 years, they're in management making $87,000. Same starting point, same 6 years, but the one who stayed strategically is making 36% more annually. That's $23,000 extra per year, which over a 30-year career is $690,000 in additional income before you even account for the fact that the higher salary compounds into higher future raises. The mistake isn't changing jobs, it's changing jobs without a strategy. Leaving a role after 18 months because you're bored means you never stayed long enough to get promoted, develop deep expertise, or build the kind of reputation that leads to significant opportunities. You're always starting over as the new person instead of becoming the person everyone relies on who commands higher pay. There's someone who had 7 jobs between ages 23 and 32. Each move came with a small raise, maybe 5% to 10%. By 32, they were making $71,000 and hitting a ceiling because they didn't have deep expertise in anything. They'd spent 9 years being mediocre at 7 different things instead of becoming excellent at 1 or 2 things. Meanwhile, someone who had 2 strategic job changes in that same period, staying long enough to get promoted twice at the first company, then making 1 big move to a senior role at a better company, was making $103,000 at 32. That's a $32,000 annual income gap that'll persist for their entire career, all because one understood that strategic patience pays more than constant lateral movement. The third mistake is having kids before you can afford them. This is controversial, and people get defensive about it, but the financial math is undeniable. Having children before you've built any financial foundation doesn't just pause your wealth building, it often permanently derails it. The average cost of raising a child from birth to 18 is about $310,000, according to recent data. That's roughly $17,200 per year. But that number doesn't include the opportunity cost of reduced career focus, the years one parent might work part-time or stay home, the impact on career advancement from being less available for travel or late hours. When you factor in everything, having a child probably costs closer to $400,000 to $500,000 in direct costs, plus lost income and career opportunities. Here's where timing becomes crucial. Someone who has a kid at 24 when they're making $45,000 with 0 savings is in a completely different situation than someone who waits until 32 when they're making $82,000 with $65,000 already saved and invested. The 24-year-old will spend their entire 20s in financial survival mode. They'll be paying for daycare that costs almost as much as they earn. They'll miss career opportunities because they can't work late or travel. they'll never build the financial cushion that makes everything easier. The 32-year-old has already established their career trajectory. They've got savings to handle emergencies. They can afford quality childcare without it consuming their entire paycheck. They've built enough career capital that taking a step back temporarily doesn't destroy their long-term prospects. Same kid, same costs, but completely different financial outcomes based solely on timing. There's a case of two siblings that illustrates this perfectly. One had a kid at 23 while making $41,000. The other waited until 33 when making $89,000. Both kids are now 15. The one who had a kid early is 38, making $68,000 with about $32,000 saved for retirement. They've spent 15 years financially struggling. The one who waited is 48, making $124,000 with $520,000 saved. They've spent the last 15 years comfortably raising their kid while still building wealth. The 8-year difference in timing created a lifetime of financial divergence. The mistake isn't having kids. It's having them before you've built the financial foundation to support them without destroying your own future. People who have kids in their early 20s often never recover financially. They spend their entire 20s and 30s in survival mode, and by the time the kids are grown, they're in their 40s with minimal savings and no time to catch up. The compound effect of starting wealth building in your 20s versus your 40s is the difference between retiring comfortably and working until you're 70. The fourth mistake is not investing in developing high-income skills during the years when you have maximum flexibility. Your 20s and early 30s are when you can work 60-hour weeks, go back to school, learn difficult new skills, take career risks, and generally invest in yourself without massive life complications. Most people waste this window watching Netflix, going out, and generally treating their 20s like an extended college experience instead of the career foundation it actually is. Someone spends their 20s working 40 hours a week at a job that pays adequately but doesn't really develop valuable skills. They go home, watch TV, hang out with friends, enjoy life. There's nothing wrong with any of that individually, but collectively, they're consuming the years when they have the most energy and the fewest obligations. By 35, they're making $72,000 doing work that hasn't fundamentally changed since they were 25. They're better at it, but not different at it. Compare that to someone who spent their 20s strategically building skills that would pay off long term. They learned to code. They got an MBA. They developed sales skills. They learned a specialized technical skill that's in demand. They worked late. They sacrificed social activities. They invested their evenings and weekends in becoming more valuable. By 35, they're making $135,000 because they spent a decade becoming someone whose skills command serious money. The gap between $72,000 and $135,000 annually is $63,000. Over 30 years, that's $1.89 million in additional income. But the real cost is even higher because the person making more can save more, which compounds over time. The person making $72,000 might save $8,000 annually. The person making $135,000 might save $35,000 annually. After 30 years at 10% returns, the higher earner has $6.3 million, while the lower earner has $1.4 million. The decisions you made in your 20s about skill development created a $5 million wealth gap. There's someone who spent their 20s working normal hours, enjoying life, not pushing themselves too hard. They're 42 now, making $79,000, and they're fine. Not struggling, but not thriving. They look at people making $150,000 or $200,000 and assume those people got lucky or had connections. They don't see the hours those people put in during their 20s, learning skills, building expertise, and making themselves valuable. They consumed their 20s instead of investing them, and now they're dealing with the consequences. The window for developing high-income skills doesn't last forever. By your late 30s, you've got too many obligations to work 60-hour weeks while learning something difficult. You've got kids, a mortgage, aging parents, responsibilities that make it nearly impossible to invest the kind of focused effort required to fundamentally change your skill set. The people who win financially are the ones who recognized that their 20s were an investment period, not a consumption period. What makes these four mistakes particularly devastating is that they compound negatively. Financing a lifestyle you can't afford means you can't invest in skill development because you're too busy paying off debt. Job hopping for lateral moves means you never develop the expertise that commands serious money. Having kids before you're financially ready means you can't take career risks or invest in further education. Not developing high-income skills means you're stuck in lower-paying work that makes all the other problems worse. These mistakes feed on each other, creating a financial trap that's incredibly difficult to escape. Someone who makes all four of these mistakes in their 20s might spend their entire 30s and 40s trying to dig out of the hole they created. Meanwhile, someone who avoided these mistakes is building compounding wealth that accelerates with each passing year. The brutal truth is that most people make at least 2 or 3 of these mistakes. They finance a car they can't afford while job hopping without strategy and never developing high-value skills. Or they have kids too early while financing a lifestyle and neglecting career development. The combinations vary, but the outcome is the same. Decades of financial stress that could have been avoided by making better decisions during a relatively short window of time. If you're young enough that you haven't made these mistakes yet, understand that the next 5 to 10 years will largely determine your financial life. The decisions you make about debt, career development, family timing, and skill building will echo for decades. You can either set yourself up for compounding success or lock yourself into compounding failure. There's no middle ground where you can just coast and hope things work out. If you've already made one or more of these mistakes, you need to understand what they're actually costing you. Not to beat yourself up about the past, but to motivate yourself to stop making them worse. You can't undo financing a lifestyle in your 20s, but you can stop doing it now. You can't go back and strategically develop your career from the beginning, but you can start being strategic today. The longer you wait to course correct, the more expensive these mistakes become. These aren't temporary setbacks that you recover from easily. They're fundamental errors that compound negatively for your entire financial life. The person who makes these mistakes and the person who avoids them might start at the exact same place. Same income, same background, same opportunities. But 30 years later, one is financially secure and the other is stressed about money despite doing everything they thought they were supposed to do. The difference isn't luck. It's not connections. It's just avoiding 4 specific mistakes during the window when those mistakes matter most.